Okay, welcome to Franchising 101. We have Dana Hall from FranNet with us. Dana has presented for us before, and I can tell you he's an expert on everything you need to know about owning a franchise. So we're very pleased to have him with us today. So before we have him get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about SCORE and make sure that you're taking advantage of all the information that we offer to the small business community. Our goal is to educate you and share information and help you succeed. And we do that in three different main ways. One is through the information on our website, score.org. You're going to find templates you can download, articles, podcasts, blogs, just tons of great information. So I strongly encourage you to to dig through there, and you'll find, like I said, find lots of great information. Another way that we share information is through our workshops and webinars. Those are advertised through social media, our newsletters, and of course are listed on our website. We are always adding new topics, so definitely keep a lookout. I'm sure there's another one coming along to help you with your business plans. The other thing we do is offer mentorship, and it's probably the most important thing that SCORE does. Our mentors are volunteers. They come to us with a variety of skills and experiences that they want to share with the small business community. And we work with folks on every point in the journey, whether you're trying to decide if small business is right for you, you're in the planning phase, you're at the beginning stages of starting your business, growing your business, or exiting your business. We can help you in any moment along that journey on any business topic you can imagine. So what is a mentoring session like if you've never had one? They usually run around 45 minutes-ish. They're going to want to learn about you, your goals, your challenges, and they're going to work with you to formulate a plan so that you are successful. Oftentimes, they'll invite in other mentors as your needs change, just to make sure that you get what you need to do what you need to do. So the next logical question is, how do I get a mentor? There are multiple ways to get a mentor, but probably the easiest is just to go to the score.org website, put in your zip code in the match me by zip code box, and that will match you to the chapter that's nearest you. Then there's a short form. We're going to use that information to help match you to the mentor. Tell me, what your business is and how a mentor can help you in the current moment. And that's really the easiest way to get a mentor. So today's format, I do have that you submit questions through Q&A, which you absolutely can. We don't have a huge, overwhelming crowd today, so we probably could also take questions through chat just as easily. And that said, if you have questions, Dana can answer them. So definitely don't feel shy about getting those questions in, and we'll get those taken care of you. We are also recording, and the recording will be posted on the score.org/Boston website. Just look on the blue bar under the local workshops pull down. You'll find the link to the presentations. So I'm going to go ahead and pull down my share and introduce you to Dana Hall. It's all yours.
Thank you, Teresa. Let me get my presentation up and running here. Let's get it in presentation mode. There we go. Thank you for the introduction, Teresa. I appreciate it. Good morning, folks. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us. It'll be probably 45 minutes. As Teresa mentioned, happy to answer questions along the way, the chat, that would be helpful. I'll make sure that either within the course of the presentation I answer them, or certainly at the end. So just real quick about me. I have 25 years of experience in the franchise space in a number of capacities, most notably the finance area, but I've also had a lot of experience in operations and marketing within franchise businesses, particularly with Wendy's for a number of years, and also Panera Bread. I am local to the Massachusetts area, so have a pretty deep understanding of the territory and the markets within sort of the New England area. So who is FranNet? We're a long-standing partner nationally and locally with SCORE, one of our best partners. We can't thank them enough for allowing us to be resource partners to them. But FranNet is almost 35 years old now, franchise consulting firm. I have about 80 to 100 peers across the US and Canada. We value this partnership with SCORE tremendously. It's such a natural fit, and we really thank them for working with us. On the business side for us, we're matchmakers. I'll talk about that in a minute. We particularly are very particular, I should say, about the franchise companies we work with and present to clients. We also have great resources around legal, funding companies, people that we can refer you to as you go through due diligence. So what do we do real quick specifically? We don't help companies franchise. We don't consult on how to improve your business. I work very narrowly and specifically with individuals that are consider being their own business owner within the franchise model. So that's called a franchisee, being a franchisee for a company. And how I do that is educate folks on what franchising is, what it is not. That's sort of why you're here today. What are the different industries, the different companies? What are the opportunities? And what we do is we offer choices to match what your skills are, what your goals are, what your background is, what you're good at, what you want to avoid. There are so many different franchise options. We'll talk about that. It can be very daunting. So our role is to help match you with a franchise concept that's going to fit you specifically. And we do that to no cost to you. So I'm not taking a fee, a retainer. Much like SCORE, it costs you nothing to work with me. Ultimately, if somebody becomes a franchisee with one of the companies that we introduce them to, that company pays me a commission. So it's really a win-win-win. It's a win because for me, because ultimately, I make a living. The franchisor is found a good and solid and capable franchisee, and obviously the franchisee gets to work with somebody like me who's an expert in this area without any cost to them. So it's a win-win-win. So today, why business ownership? A little bit around, the typical folks that are coming to me and what their situation is and who we work with. So you can get a sense of if that resonates for you. We have different options. We're going to talk about some myths around franchising. There's a few. And then I would talk about, how we go about matching people. What does that look like? So this is, again, from over 30 years. I've been with FranNet for 6 years, so I've got some pretty significant background. And what are the stories I hear from folks? And these are some of the topics, some of the adjectives that I hear from folks that are considering being their own business owner. Why would you want to do this? I'm not fulfilled in my job. I don't have the flexibility around my day, my trajectory within the company, my growth. I don't feel like I have any independence, financial security, and certainly money, is an opportunity to be a business owner. Frankly, there's a lot of folks that come, and people are typically middle-aged when they come to work with us. So they have some experience, and unfortunately, a lot of them have been through multiple layoffs, and they're trying to avoid that. And just having more control over their life and their career and their day. So, broadly, that's a lot of what we hear from clients. And what success means to an individual is different. Some people it's maybe it's just more impact. For others, maybe it's the financial end of it. Everybody's got a different story. So again, reasons why we have folks come to us and work with us to find a better option, a better path. So what are the different options for doing that? You could certainly start a business from scratch. This is America after all. And it's the land of opportunity, and entrepreneurs start from nothing all the time. That's one option. buying an existing business, just like houses get bought and sold, people sell their house and move on. Same with businesses. So that's an option. And then potentially being a franchisee is a third option. So we're going to talk just quickly, pros and cons. Not an exhaustive list, but just some things to think about. So if you were to start from scratch, what are the good things about that? Total control, all of just decisions are yours. Certainly for creative people, somebody that's always had this, oh, I want to do this and this, I want to do it my way versus what I've seen out in the market. Great for that. There are no rules, certainly a larger upside, because as you'll find with a franchise, there are financial obligations, or there's a trade-off there. And for those that really have a passion to do something very specific, you can fulfill that directly in your mind's eye and how you want to do it. The difficulty could be some of the same things, frankly. You must create all the systems, processes. You have to build that business. It's not already predetermined, right? So you've got to create all the all the framework for that business. It's not already there. There's limited financial options to fund it. Banks aren't looking typically to fund something that doesn't have a background, a track record. So a lot of times it would have to be self-funded. Takes much longer because you are figuring all this out along the way. So that the timeline is much slower. And relatively speaking to the other two options, this is more anecdotal, but they do probably tend to fail a little bit more often. What if I bought an existing business? So in I call it a good business, a thriving business, obviously it will already have cash flow or profitability, goodwill with customers and employees, hopefully. Certainly actual financial results. This is key for lenders and for somebody trying to determine if they should buy this business. Well, I get to see past results. So profit and loss statements, tax returns, how has this business actually performed? That makes it attractive to lenders. They're obviously in an existing business, given the fact that it's got cash flow and has been in operation. This obviously should be a good market established with customers, maybe even some existing employees come with the business. And hopefully there's been some framework, written down, manuals, processes, how does this business operate? So it's not all in the owner's head. There's some systems out there with the business that a new owner can follow. Disadvantages, again, can be the flip side. Why is somebody selling this? Is it distressed? So is it not making money? Does it have a poor reputation? One of the hardest things is how do I know what to pay for it? The average layperson wouldn't know how to price somebody. If you're buying a house, you have a realtor that can help you, compare and know what the market should be for a certain kind of home. That's a hard thing to do in this area without help. And there are business brokers that can help, but understanding how it should be priced. Are the people trained that are coming with the business? It's going to cost more. A good business, you will have to pay for the fact that all that has been put into place. So it definitely costs more. So there will be higher debt service. And the hidden seller motives is probably the trickiest one. Why is somebody selling this business? In my view, there are only a few really legitimate reasons. Somebody's retiring. Somebody is physically moving for some reason. So if it's a business that is not portable, that can't come with them, they may need to sell it. Unfortunately, I've seen cases where there's health issues for the owner that requires them. And then you do have occasions where folks are much better at creating businesses than operating them. So maybe they're serial entrepreneurs and just want to, cash out, so to speak, and move on to something else. If it's not one of those, you got to question why somebody would, is there something that you don't know? So just be leery about that. And your last option is a franchise business. Pros and cons here. In many cases, there's it's a known commodity. There's a brand there, right? Name recognition, the things that we see driving around. We'll talk about that in a bit. So should be some intellectual property associated with it. What does that mean? Like websites, logos, things that are protected by trademark, websites, that sort of thing. One of the biggest things is a proven business system. They've refined it. There's a process. You coming in as a franchisee, have a blueprint to follow. That's critical. That's why you would want to do this. It's something you don't have to recreate yourself. That franchisor providing their franchisees with really strong training and support systems. Again, why you would want to buy into it. How do they support you? How do they ensure that you will be successful? Because of that, there should be a lower, all other things being equal, lower failure rate because of that system and support and the processes. Relatively lower cost because you're sort of not fumbling around as a new owner in your own business, trying things, iterating, making mistakes, taking too long to figure certain things out. So because of that, it should cost a little less. There are better financing options because of the known commodity part of it. So it is attractive to a number of lenders typically, depending on the industry. Disclosure is a key. We'll talk about that in a minute, but the fact that there is something that you can refer to that gives you more information, it's called a franchise disclosure document. That's a real critical piece to your due diligence. And then you have a franchise family. What I mean by that is, again, the franchisor providing all that support, but now there's other franchisees. You have peers that, maybe you've already been in it 5-10 years that you can ask questions of, that they can give you advice, counsel. You build those relationships and they can, help you in that system, learn and grow. On the flip side, there's not an industry or an area for everything in franchising. Even though there's thousands of franchise concepts, it doesn't cover every single interest that somebody might have. They tend to be very structured by nature of the fact that they got a business system and training and support. They kind of want folks to follow their process. Some are more restrictive than others. There's territory restriction. What I mean by that is, if you have a location, you're only protected in a certain sort of square miles around you. Or if you own zip codes for a service business, you have an area that it's only yours. So that protects you, but it also could be viewed as restrictive. You can only sell their products. I say you can't go rogue and start offering things that's not part of their system. And the other one is financial. In exchange for all of the good, there is what's called a royalty payment. So that's a percentage of your sales that's paid to the franchisor. That's how they make their money. So it's a trade-off. In most cases, I think it's a good one and a good franchise concept, but it is something to consider. So going back to, your own business, and I'm not dissuading anybody from doing that, but, these are some of the things to consider, because I do get asked this, if I present a concept to somebody, they say, well, okay, I'm going to own a sign company. I buy some equipment and have a shop and I'm off and running. And that could be true, but there's all these business decisions that need to be made. And I won't read through all these, but you get the point that it's probably a little bit more daunting when you actually get into it than most folks would consider. So these are all the things you've got to be comfortable with. Now, there are people like SCORE that can help with a lot of this. That's certainly true. But for some, it's really nice to have a framework and a lot of these decisions or these areas already laid out, and you kind of follow the system. So what exactly is a franchise? Very simply, from a legal standpoint, it's a license to use a business system, all their products, their name, the trademark. You are given the right to use the system, the franchise concept, in exchange for there'll be an initial franchise fee, an upfront one-time fee. That varies depending on the concept and how much territory you commit to, and ongoing royalties. So again, those are the two financial trade-offs to having a business system that's in place and that you're executing. So that's really at its core what a franchise is. So I mentioned earlier about disclosure. What is one of the big advantages from what I call due diligence, or the process of determining, and making a decision? You want to know a lot of things about said company. And the government several years ago, probably back in the early 70s, finally put some framework around that process to make it more consistent across different companies so you can compare. So a franchise disclosure document is something you would get as a potential franchisee from that franchisor that tells you all sorts of things. And I won't spend a ton of time on this, but you'll just get the sense that it's a long document. It could be 200 pages. Think about if you ever bought a financial product like a mutual fund. They have to provide you a prospectus that tells you, what do they invest in? What are the fees associated with it? How do I sell it? What am I getting into? Same thing with this. It's going to tell you what the franchisor does very specifically, who runs the operation, who are the executives, what's their experience, have they ever filed for bankruptcy, have they ever been sued? One of the biggest is, what are the costs of this? What is it going to cost me to be a franchisee? So that's everything from the franchise fee to equipment to insurance, and even what we call working capital, which is money to pay bills until the business is self-sufficient. So this franchise disclosure document will give you a range, because a lease in Boston is different than a lease in, say, Kansas City. So there'll be a range, but it'll be a pretty tight range, and it'll give you a very good sense of, what is this going to cost me? What are the royalties? How much are they? How are they paid? When are they paid? All details around that. It's going to define the territory that you're allowed to operate in very specifically. And there's some other legal stuff around renewing and termination. What if I want to do, what if I want to sell it? What are my obligations? One of the biggest advantages of a franchise concept, beyond what I've already told you, is the ability to talk to other franchisees. This is powerful. 4, 5, 6, 8 other folks that are currently operating that business, being able to talk to them and ask them questions, and get their perspective and understand their experience. So this franchise disclosure document is a legal requirement by the government for any concept selling and calling themselves a franchise. And the contact info for these current and past franchisees is required in that document. So that process I just explained is what in the industry we call validation. So you're going to hear all sorts of information from the company. Then you get to talk to existing franchisees and sort of validate against that and ask them all sorts of questions. So it's a really good set of information to help you make a decision, talking to existing owners and getting a sense of, hey, do I feel like I could, am I hearing good things, but do I feel like I could be like that person? Do I see myself in that system? Really good to help make a decision. So let's talk about myths. And there are a number of them. And probably the biggest one is, well, great, I want to own a business, but I want nothing to do, or maybe you do, but it's only fast food and retail, the things that we all know and see, that we use, that we drive around and see on storefronts and buildings. And that's true. It's a big chunk. It's probably 25% of all the franchise concepts are in that specific area, food and retail. But there is so much else beyond that. Personal services, so that could be anything from a hair concept like a Great Clips, to a nail salon, to a massage concept. Commercial and residential services. So commercial, we call business to business. That could be a sign company, a marketing concept that's going to help other businesses. Residential services, everything from roofing to landscaping to floors in your house to painting, automotive, the Meineke's of the world. So there's also, that's just a smattering. If you think about another way to look at it would be if you think about concepts that might be driven by changes in demographics. So senior care is a big industry right now because so many people are reaching 65 every year because of that baby boomer. Back in the 60s, those folks are all, sort of retiring. They need help in a lot of different areas. So senior services, cleaning services, things that are considered essential. So damage restoration, fixing the home, and again, B2B. It could be a business coaching, staffing. And again, these are just a small sampling. Suffice to say, it's not just fast food and retail. That's the core message here. A lot of different options. Franchises must have the best product. And that's the only way to succeed. And it's going to seem a little counterintuitive, and I'm going to pick on McDonald's. But, the reality is it's not always just the best product that can be successful. And again, we could probably all make a better hamburger or find a better hamburger, but McDonald's has, their niche. They're very predictable. They're good at what they do. It's average, but you know what you're going to get. And so it's like, how is it possible that something that I think even they would admit is not gourmet, it's mediocre. So how do they get 13,000 locations? Because they have a tremendous series of systems that they created that makes it repeatable. So they're tremendous marketers. They're great trainers. So many of their executives, came up through the ranks of store manager all the way to the C-suite, the executive suite. They're actually, in the case of McDonald's, side note, they're actually a real estate company. They own most of the real estate. They happen to sell food. So they're really good at knowing where to put these locations and exactly how big they should be and, what exact street in the market they should be on. And they do tremendous things in the back office to streamline and make the business effective, efficient, and profitable. So, it's really, in many cases, more about how systematized and organized and repeatable is a particular product or service versus it's got to be the absolute best. The other thing I think you often hear or think about is, oh, I got to have something that nobody else is doing because, competition is bad. And in some cases, competition is difficult and it could be cutthroat. But in a franchise concept, typically you're just looking for a demand for something. Because it obviously, if there's a demand and you can do it in a more efficient, effective manner, you're going to win. When I worked for Panera, actually, more specifically, or better example was when I worked for Wendy's, you would think, oh, okay, we want to go where McDonald's and Burger King aren't. And it was actually the opposite, because a trade area, a particular area, is where the folks are, where people are. You want to be accessible. You want to be visible. So one of the things that we would look at, traffic patterns, demographics, but also what other concepts are there? And that means the market is there. If we operate well, we're going to get our share of the market, right? You're not going to, McDonald's is the big, going back to them is the 800-pound gorilla. Well, every market they're in, they don't have 100% of everybody that wants a hamburger. They've got their piece of the market and others have theirs. So competition in the context of franchising is usually, not considered a bad thing. As long as a franchisee executes a good system, you'll be able to extract your piece of that market successfully. This is the other, this is in no particular order. I think this is probably the second biggest one. Oh, every franchise is millions of dollars. I could never afford that. The footnote here says Fran data from 2019. I would just tell you this was updated last year, and I have to do that, but it's the percentages here are very similar. So the reality is, particularly with the concepts and the clients we work with, most franchises are in that 50 to 500,000 range. You could see almost 70%. Yes, there are a number of concepts that are very expensive. Anything is brick and mortar. That some of that retail that we talked about. We work with a very high-end dog boarding and doggy daycare concept. That one location is probably $1.5 million to $2 million. It's a big building with lots of equipment and lots of rooms, and that's very expensive. But the majority of concepts that I'm presenting to clients that are legitimate, good quality, successful franchisors are under $500,000. So, again, a myth around, or the idea that everything is, $1 million investment is not true. Side note, okay, say it's $200,000. What would I need? And think about it just like a home. You're going to have some down payment, some cash down, in order to be in a franchise, but you don't have to have it all in cash. So a $200,000 investment, might require you to have $25,000 to $50,000 thereabouts in what we call liquid assets, right? Cash, essentially. Think about it as a down payment, like I said, on a house. And there are financing options for the rest. So not everything is directly out of pocket. What could those other sources be? Again, you're going to need some savings for the down payment. I joke that the rich uncle is always helpful, but I've seen a number of clients, have either parents or somebody that can help on the liquid part of it. I've had clients use a home equity line of credit for the liquid portion. I've had clients use this securities-backed line of credit, which is just, I've got a portfolio, I'm going to take a loan against it. That could be a source. The 401k IRA one is one, I won't go too deep into it, but most people, and I didn't know this until I started doing this, never even know this is an option, but you are allowed to utilize a portion of your retirement, whether that's 401k IRA, my wife's a teacher, that's a 403b, whatever vehicle it might be, you could take a portion of that without early withdrawal penalty from the government and without tax, which is normally what you would have to do if you took money out to go on vacation. You would pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty under 59.5, and you would pay your tax rate, your current marginal tax rate, to take that money out. But if it's to start and run a business, tax and penalty free. And the IRS approved this over 40 years ago. And the reason being is because they want businesses to start, they want businesses to create jobs, and they want businesses that will pay corporate tax. So it benefits them in the long run. So that is another source. And these are some companies that we work with that do this all day long. And because it is a complicated, a little bit legal arrangement, but many people use this. So it's a good option. So going back to myths, another one, that the more I invest, the more I make. Not a perfect linear correlation at all. My two examples are, unfortunately, restaurants are very volatile. People's tastes are finicky, things change. Location has to be right. Restaurants can be really tough, and they're expensive, and they fail. So that right there tells you, just because you invested a lot doesn't mean you're going to return a lot. On the flip side, there are service businesses. When I say service, I mean these are things that don't have, expensive locations and lots of equipment. So think about a residential cleaning business. You're going to have employees go in, clean people's homes. Um, Relatively speaking, not very expensive. But if you build that business and build your client base, it can be very lucrative on a relatively small investment. So don't never correlate what I invest with what can ultimately be returned. You have to really look at each individual concept and do the research to determine what the return is on that investment. It's not all based on how much you spend. My favorite is that you have to be a mechanic to own a Meineke car care center. Or I have to have been a licensed barber to own a hair care business. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, many franchisors would avoid those folks because they really want somebody that's going to use their system. So and it varies by industry and company, but generally speaking, what a franchisor is looking for in an owner, in a franchisee, first and foremost, it's somebody that's willing to use their system. They're not going to come in and try to recreate everything. That defeats the purpose. You certainly want your own spin on it, and you have your own thoughts and opinions in your own mind, and you want to use that. But generally speaking, you got to play within some guardrails. So they're looking for somebody that believes in and is willing to use their system, and then it's going to bring skills from their past. So whether that is, I have the ability to identify talent, hire talent, manage people, grow and train those people, huge skill for a small business owner to have. That's something that a franchisor is looking for. I'm really good at business development. I'm good in sales. I can sell something. Very good skill to have in most franchise businesses. I've got tremendous financial skills and background. That's very attractive. Can you manage the finances of a business? You can have, tremendous sales and demand and doing well, but if you're not managing and dropping, all those sales to the bottom line, it's not going to be successful. So financial capabilities and marketing, I could go on, but that's what they're looking for, folks that have transferable skills and willing to use their system. And those are the most important attributes, not the specific skill of whatever the business does. You're generally going to hire folks to fix brakes and to cut hair. All right, so that's enough with myths. Flip into a couple of different business operations systems, I call it, that a franchisor creates for their franchisees. So what does that mean? What would a day in their life look like? You could either be this owner operator. So that's somebody that's directly going to be involved day to day. Now that could take a number of different paths. If it's a sign company and you in the business every day, like at the desk or in the back building signs, maybe not. Maybe you're the business development person, and you're out talking to customers and creating demand and selling the business, but there's other people in the location. Point being that an owner operator is somebody that is this is their full-time endeavor. This is what they do. How they insert themselves in the business can vary, but this is their day-to-day, and they don't have any other outside. Generally speaking, they don't have a job or anything like that, right? This is their full effort. As opposed to a semi-absentee ownership, or sometimes you hear semi-passive, that's more of the manager. So maybe I have a job. Maybe I'm a real estate agent, but I have time on the side. So these concepts require less of an owner's direct time day to day, and it's more of okay, I'm going to have somebody that's managing that day to day, the details, executing it on the ground every day. I'm more of an executive highest level. So managing that manager, understanding the finances, and maybe some of the marketing effort. So it's less time, and it allows for other interests, business interests outside of just that. And frankly, there's some gray area in between. But generally speaking, there are, owner operator concepts and semi-absentee ownership concepts. It's two ways, different ways to be a franchise owner. Real quick, because it's always important to me to try to, people often don't think that they have the background, or, oh, I did this, or this is my industry, or, that would never be me. I've never done it before. So these are just the background of folks that have worked with me and bought businesses, and it's all over the place, right? Folks that are at the management level, folks that are higher than that, different industries, different backgrounds. Somebody that's in banking that decides to buy a fitness studio, not probably the first thing you would have thought of, but in working with them, that's ultimately what made sense for them. So, folks from all different backgrounds and industries. There's not one, perfect profile or typical profile. It's really more the desire for folks to want to be their own boss, that have reasonable expectations about the effort it's going to take, how long it'll take to ramp up, and can sort of grind through some initial challenges. It's not going to be perfect. As long as you understand that and prepare for it, those are the characteristics of well, the common characteristics of folks I've seen is just the expectation part and the willingness to work through challenges. What you did in your past could be a variety of different things. In any case, really the biggest thing about being a franchisee is, you're still that owner. You're still responsible for it. It's still your business. You've got to work in it. The franchisor doesn't do the work for you, but you're not alone in it. You have the franchisor to support you, and also other franchisees to be a resource. And those two things are key. Okay, last section. Maybe you're interested, maybe not, but what would my next steps? What should I be thinking about? And first and foremost is, and I always highly recommend, just from what I call a headset standpoint, is to separate what the business does from the function of the owner. So your day-to-day may be different than what the business actually does. So what is, again, going back to the sign concept. If you owned a sign business, you might have somebody that's skilled in sign making, graphic arts, all those sorts of things, but you're really good at business development and sales, and you like going out and shaking hands and meeting new people and articulating how your sign business is better. That's a sales function. So that's the business makes signs, but you as the owner maybe are selling it. So you can see how those two things are different. Always understand what the business does, and then what you will do in the business. Because that's the best way to sort of get your head around what your day-to-day will be like, and to see if you fit. So beyond that, there's a couple of steps I always suggest. I see there's some stuff in the chat, and I'll get to it. Really make a list of the things that are important to you. First of all, why would you even be doing this? And again, it's different for different people. What are the things that are important to you to achieve? What are your goals? Is it the challenge of it? That's true for some folks. Is it, I want to build some sort of equity, or sellable asset for retirement? Maybe. Is it just, I travel all the time and I'm on a plane and I work 80 hours. a week, and I have no other, other time for family or whatever. You may still work really hard in a franchise business, but maybe you have more control over when that work is done, and there's flexibility, and you're in charge of it. Um, I have a lot of people that say, you know what, I've done very well in my career, and I did it for other people, and I've always wanted to do something that's more community centric and that connects me to the people I live around, and I want to have impact. There's so many different reasons that somebody might do this. It's real critical for you to know what's important to you so you make the right match, and have that very critical list of things that are important to you in a business. The other piece is just, what am I going to bring to it? You don't have to be everything. Not everybody's skilled at everything. But if the key role for an owner is to be in the sales role, and that's what makes a good franchisee, if you have no interest or ability in the sales function, that's probably some business that you should avoid. So if you owned a staffing executive recruiting firm, for instance, very heavy on the sales aspect, and that's expected of the owner. So if that's not your strength, that's something you should avoid. So really identifying your transferable skills. What are the things you've done in the past? What are the things you're good at? What are the things you like to do? Some people are really good at providing great customer service, follow up, making sure they're satisfied. Some folks are just logistically really good at, so they're good at the actual operation, the day-to-day, or project management types of things. Other folks are really good, I mentioned it earlier, hiring, training, and managing and developing people, critical skill. So know what skills you're really good at, what will you bring to this, and what do you want to do. That becomes critical to what the business does and making a good match. And finally, what are the other characteristics? Some people, I don't want to, I want to work from home. All right, there's concepts for that. Other people are like, I want to get out of my home every day. I want to go somewhere. So maybe it's an office, maybe it's a storefront. I only want, and I've only ever really been successful at managing a small team. So, 3, 4, 5 employees. Okay, well, avoid a business that requires 50 employees. I prefer something that's tangible, so a product versus a service. Okay, so you get the point. What are the characteristics of the business itself that you'd be most comfortable in? So make a list of those things. And so if you put all those things together, what I do in the business versus what the business does, what my skill set is, and then what the day-to-day looks like, now you get to build this, you get to create this model, this profile, and that will narrow down all the different options. It's a process of elimination, I call it, to figure out what's going to fit you the best, you individually. So a little bit of an abrupt ending there, but things to consider. And I see there's a number of questions here. So
Yeah, I do have one that's in Q&A. If we can just, that one's been there for a bit, so we'll snag that one first. Are there specific franchises that, or examples that are better for a semi-absentee owner?
yeah, absolutely. So think of it this way. It's usually going to be concepts where it's probably going to be something location based. So again, waxing concept, a nail salon, a restaurant. It's probably going to have a physical location, and there needs to be a manager or somebody there every day operating it. So again, as an owner, as an investor, as the franchisee, that could be you, but there are a lot of concepts that don't want it to be the owner. They want a manager running all the day-to-day, and then an owner that ultimately maybe you have 3 locations, right? So you're managing 3 managers, and you're in charge of the financial aspect of the business and maybe some of the marketing spend, but you as the owner are not in there, every day. It's a manage the manager, and they typically are going to be these sort of location-based concepts. And honestly, the reason they don't want the owner there day to day is because they want this owner to own multiple locations and oversee multiple managers over a period of time. So I think that's the best way to think of that. It's probably going to be, something with a physical location and ultimately owning multiple locations of that.
Okay. How long do you expect to wait to get back your investment? Would you wait 3 to 4 years, 10 years? In other words, what's the ROI, return on your investment?
So, that's the dreaded, it's going to vary answer. I would tell you, generally speaking, the, you know, um, the lower the investment, the sooner to pay back in years. So if you think about, so if it's $150,000 investment, and you're, generating cash flow of, 50,000 a year on that, these are just, very broad examples. Your payback in years, maybe 3 or 4 years in that math. If it's a multi-million dollar, investment with a little bit of lower margin, it could be 5, 6 years till you get the total investment back. Now, again, over the long term, it could be very lucrative, but it just may take longer to pay the investment back. So, I mean, this, return on investment and how many years it will take are two different metrics, but, it's going to vary. And generally speaking, I would tell you a lower investment service business with not a lot of fixed assets and expensive equipment can and probably will pay back, on average sooner than a larger investment.
Are there some industries that you think are better to avoid in the current market?
So this is my personal opinion because I've had some experience in it, and I tend to be very conservative. Uh, I kind of avoid things that potentially could be viewed as a fad. Um, and I don't want to call out any particular industry or business, but and that could be different things. A fad could be different things to different people, but there are businesses that come and go. There are industries that, particularly in food, where something is really popular and all of a sudden it isn't. I tend to avoid those kind of business. People are always, yoga's been around for 2,000 years. People are always going to want to do yoga. You know, businesses always need signs. Seniors, that folks that are turning 65 for the next 20 years, they're going to stay in their home. They're going to need maybe some extra help. So these things that services and products that have been around for a long time and people are always going to need, and now and in the future, if it's not squarely in one of those areas, I personally think those are things to avoid. Now, you could also view that as, hey, maybe it's the next thing, and it takes off, and it doesn't become a fad. But that's for you to decide. I just tend to avoid those.
Okay. If you own a franchise for a few years and you decide to get out, can you resell the franchise or sell it back to the franchisor?
So a couple different things there. Typical franchise agreement is 10 years. So 95% of the franchisors that are out there, if you sign a franchise agreement contract, it's 10 years. It's a few that are different, but generally speaking, 10 years. It's your business. You can always either sell that to somebody else. Sometimes the franchisor assists with that. Sometimes they do not. There will be language in that franchise agreement that stipulates how you are allowed to do that. So for instance, they may have to approve whoever you sell it to. So that's a restriction. They're going to have say in that. Some franchisors will buy back a franchisee. Others are 100%, their industry or their particular concept is 100% franchised, and they want nothing to do with ownership. So it would have to be either an existing franchisee, one of your peers, another franchisee, or somebody new. But again, in either case, there's going to be restrictions around that. The most common one, again, is they have to approve that person. So they want to make sure that they, just like you, they wanted to make sure you were a fit, that you could afford it, all those sorts of things. They're going to do the same thing with whoever you sell it to. And there are other requirements in there, but so it's a little restrictive, but yes, you can certainly resell a franchise business. They do it all the time. It's just there are some requirements.
Can you describe again what a company such as FranNet, what you do?
So what my firm does?
Yes.
Yeah. So as consultants, our role is somebody that is considering becoming a franchisee, or somebody that's just looking to be a small business owner. They maybe don't know where to start. And I help with that whole process of matching somebody with understanding what franchise companies are out there. Hopefully only introducing candidates to, really good quality franchise companies that have a track record. But the biggest thing is for me to understand what your goals are, what your background is, what you want to do, what you not want to do. So we're matchmakers. I'm helping an individual determine, is this a path they should consider? That's going to be financial. That's going to be your background. Do you fit? And then if so, what concept? Are you better served with a company that installs and sells flooring in your house, or a business coach? So there's so many different options. My job is to help educate people and then match them to a franchise concept that's going to fit their profile and their goals.
Okay. That is all the questions we have submitted. So, thanks, Dana. I think that you were able to really get into things that people needed to know. And certainly, if you have further questions, you can reach out to Dana. You can reach out to us at SCORE. We're happy to assist you. We do have mentors that have owned franchises as well, so that they've got experience and can answer those questions as well. So, I guess that's it. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you again on our next
Real,
workshop.
real quick, if you got
Oh,
one more
yeah.
second. I think there's one extra said, should the SBA still be considered a source of?
Oh, yeah, I did answer that one directly
Oh,
to that person, but that's fine. Yes, I
perfect.
do think the SBA should still be considered a source. That hasn't changed.
That is true. I would agree. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. And then I just got asked about replay. Yes, it's on the score.org/Boston website. It'll take 24 to 48 hours. It'll be posted there under the local workshops pull down. So,
Yeah, and
okay.
please reach out. This is my contact information if you want to talk one-on-one. Thank you, Teresa.
All right. Thanks, Dana. Bye, everybody.
So long.